ConnectStrat strategic coach Jamison West joins this week to cover news from Kaseya, and ScalePad, as well as a story on avoiding burnout, plus a special guest interview with Cowbell Cyber's Emma Werth for an insurer's point of view on the cyber insurance market today. It's ChannelPro Weekly number 255. Ham and Dam, Sam I am. Hello and welcome to ChannelPro Weekly, episode number 250. My name is Matt Whitlock, technology editor, online director, and your host of this fine show for our wonderful audience out there like you. And if you don't know who you are, that might be a problem. But I'll give you one hint, at least as far as what you do for your job. If you help other companies with their technology needs, it doesn't have to be a tech company. It could be a hospital, it could be a bank, it could be schools, or whatever it is. But if you implement secure networks, implement technology solutions, consult about their IT, whatever those things, then you are a VAR, you're a managed service provider, you're an IT integrator, you're an IT consultant, you are a system builder. You could be all of those things. If you're all of those things, that's a lot to do. And kudos to you for taking on that kind of workload. But that's who you are. And if you are anything like that, you're in the right place. If you are not one of those things, you're going to learn about some of that stuff, and you might be up for a career change by the end of the show. So stick with us. It's going to be a lot of fun. Joining me this week and most weeks is the man of the hour, the guy who rocks black on black better than anybody else I know, who keeps things rolling here at Channel Pro, gives you the news, gives you great stories, gives you all that kind of stuff. Executive editor, I can't talk today, Rich. It's been, you know what? We took a week off. I can't, we're just going to have to work through the kinks again to get back to where we were. Executive editor Rich Freeman, welcome.
Well, thank you, Matt, and welcome to everyone in our audience. Would you believe that in addition to the black T-shirt and sport coat I'm wearing right now, for folks who are listening, I'm also wearing black shoes?
But probably pajama pants, because that's how all these Zoom calls work. Is it's all business at the top. I'm glad that your feet are doing well, but those black shoes like big poofy pajama, slipper kind of things?
No, although that doesn't necessarily mean you can't wear them with pajama bottoms, but
Rich is he's always ready to record an episode of the show. He's also always ready for a funeral, which is always good to know. So congratulations to that. Who's that man there giving a smile? I know Rich, we're going to talk about a couple things because I know we took a week off. We'll catch up on those, but we've seen his face. He's here. Oh, I'm so excited to have him back. It's always a treat when he joins us. He is, and you know what? I didn't ask you if this description was accurate. It's what we used last time. Hopefully nothing has changed. I might be wrong.
I'll let you know.
He describes himself as a serial entrepreneur and has been for well over 20 years. He has a wealth of experience in several areas like founding and operating companies in the IT space, participating in peer groups, advisory consulting, and much more. He's a strategic coach still at ConnectStrat. He's nodding, so I got that right. I don't know if he's still with TimeZest and SmileBack. You still doing that?
We sold SmileBack to ConnectWise in late 2021, but TimeZest is rolling. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. He is a delight to have on the show. Can't wait to get this one in the books. Please welcome Jamison West, the one and only. Welcome, Jamison.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
It's awesome to have you back. It's been a while. I was trying to think of the last time you were on a show. We all get busy. We all got stuff going on. But whenever I get to see your name pop up on the show sheet or at one of our events, because you presented at many of our events in the past, it's always a delight. I can't think of somebody who's just super smart, knows all this kind of stuff on the channel. We're going to learn more about you in a minute. But Rich, I got to send it back to you because we are here. It's episode 255. We're a little rusty because we weren't here last week. There was no show. Why was there no episode last week? Rich, what happened?
So a couple of things happened. Last week we were the whole Channel Pro team was in Dallas, Texas, informing and enlightening our audience on industry trends and opportunities and doing the great stuff that we do so consistently at Channel Pro SMB forum events. We were also, as it happens, if you pay attention to weather reports and you are familiar with the weather in Dallas last week, we were also braving the elements, Matt.
Yeah, I got a chance to go out into the parking lot and go ice skating in Dallas, which I thought was kind of weird, because I never really would have thought that Dallas was like this amazing winter wonderland, but apparently it is. They have snow-covered hills as far as the eye can see, ice everywhere. It was It was interesting, Rich. So how did that affect things? What happened?
Well, I mean, the biggest effect, and I cannot thank our speakers enough, basically, because every last one of them tried their level best to get into Dallas, despite the fact that there were, I don't know, hundreds, probably thousands of flight cancellations. The airport was, not even open at certain points in time. So a lot of people who tried really, really hard to get there so that they could present in person had to present remotely instead. But we got everybody. I mean, everyone who was going to participate in that event live was still part of the event. It's just some of them were joining us via Zoom.
Yeah, the show went on. It was kind of crazy. James, I'll tell my quick little story because Rich ended up flying down early, kind of seeing Rich has got like that mystical crystal ball that he can look into, and he's like, you know what? If I don't go now, my flight's going to get canceled. So you went down Monday like early, right?
Yeah, well, and that was funny. So we have this kind of editorial staff meeting at 8 a.m. my time on Monday every week, and that was when I first kind of raised that. I'm looking at the weather forecast, and I'm thinking maybe I should go now. And like 2.5 hours later, I was out the door and on my way to the airport, and it's a good thing because smooth and easy flight, no problems on the ground in Dallas. But I mean, literally minutes after I arrived in my hotel room, the flight I was going to take the next day was canceled, and I don't know if I ever would have managed to get into Dallas. So that was my experience. Is very quickly, impromptu, I decided I'm getting down there now, and that's the only reason I think I was there at all.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a similar adventure. So James, I'm going to tell my little tale of planes, trains, and automobiles. But I was in the airport. We were Daisy, who's our kind of our event manager. She lives near me, so we typically travel together. And we were at O'Hare, and our flight was Monday night, so our plan was to get in Monday night and then be there, so we could wake up Tuesday morning and kind of get at it. Well, we were in the airport and we were having dinner, and of course our flight got canceled while we were there. And so we're trying to figure out what to do, and we're looking at the weather report for the next day, and we're like, there is no chance on earth that any flight we take tomorrow is going to make it to Dallas, which turned out to be true because they automatically rebooked me then Tuesday night at 8 o'clock, and I'm like, there's just no way that's going to happen. So we were trying to figure out what to do. So Daisy comes up with this crazy plan, and I'm going to give her the credit because she really came up with it. Because I was thinking like, well, why don't we just get in the car and go? Like, let's just drive right now and see if we can get there. And she's like, why don't we just fly to the closest city and drive from there, right? So we're like, okay, well, it's almost like 7 o'clock, and we're looking at the board, and there's a flight. We were talking to a travel company, and we're like, well, can we get to Oklahoma City? But that was not until Tuesday at 1 o'clock. And we're like, that's probably going to be too late. And we noticed that there's this flight to Houston that was just getting ready to board. So we're staying in line. We're freaking out. We're like, let's try to get on that plane. So we end up swapping our tickets out. There was room on the plane. We're like having to run all the way across the terminal because it was like boarding as we were like getting our tickets exchanged. And it was, of course, across. If anybody's been O'Hare especially in Terminal 1, there's like there's some gates like right by the security exit down that stretch. But then there's also, you have to go into, there's a really long tunnel underneath to pop up on the other side where there's more gates. Of course, we had to go all the way over there. And so we're like running, and we end up flying to Houston. We get there at midnight. We're like, okay, well, let's cross our fingers and hope that there's a rental car company open and that they have a car available. So we're like, well, this is all we're just throwing caution to the wind. Like, we have no idea what's going to happen. And we get there, and they did have a car available, which was crazy. And we got on the road at like 1 a.m. and we're thinking, well, maybe we'll stop and go overnight. But like the ice storms were going to resume at 7 a.m. And we're like, you know what? Let's just drive. Let's just go through the whole night and see what happens. And that's what we did. We just drove all night from Houston to Dallas, which I know they're both in Texas, but that is still a pretty long drive. That's like a 3.5-ish 4-hour drive.
4-hour drive, yeah.
But the roads weren't terrible. It didn't really get bad until we got kind of into Dallas, and then they got a little slick. But had we not done that, there was no way Daisy and I were going to get to that show, and that would have been a big problem. So kudos to all of the sponsors that try to make it. Kudos to all of our speakers that try to make. We had to have some speakers present remotely. We did end up opening this. We don't normally have our forum events streamable or online, but because there was we had so much feedback that morning. They're like, hey, like I'm stuck in Austin, like the roads are closed, we can't go anywhere. We did ultimately open it up for our registered audience to view the event remotely. So that was kind of good. So we did everything we could. We made the best of it. And I still think, even though it was rough, I still think it was a smashing success. Rich, what do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there was a lot of improvising and just sort of furious behind the scenes strategizing. How do we make this work? And we did, I really felt like this was very close to the standard that we normally set at these events. And there was a lot required, especially by Matt and Daisy and others to make that happen. But I think we put on the best possible show that one can put on in Dallas in the middle of an ice storm.
It's true. Improvise, adapt, and overcome is what I always say, and that's what we did. We just rolled with the punches, and there it was. So that was our adventure last week. Rich, now we got some other events coming up. I know it seems crazy, but we've got more events happening. Rich, what's coming up in the calendar for events?
So at the risk of jinxing things, I'll say our next event is in Washington, D.C. near Dulles Airport. That's on March 8th and 9th. It's highly unlikely there'll be an ice storm, folks. Or if you're anywhere on the eastern seaboard, anywhere in the Northeast, please plan on joining us there. It'll be the same great content. This time, I think everyone will actually be physically there to present to you. And so that means you're going to attend the MSP automation bake-off session that our colleague Colleen Fry leads, where 3 experts in PSA and RMM systems will give you real practical recipes, things you can do with those tools to automate processes that otherwise are sapping your profitability. I'm going to be moderating a session about the keys to turning a conventional MSP or managed services business into a truly cloud-first business. We have got our awesome Who Wants to Be a Millionaire session. It's become practically a tradition at ChannelPro that there's at least one session in our SMB forum events that is game show style. The game show that we are modeling things after this time is Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And there are lots of people listening to or watching this podcast right now who are not at $1 million a year. They want to know, how do I do that? We've got some MSPs who have exceeded $1 million a year to share secrets with you. There is a website makeover workshop, lots of great stuff. The place to go to learn all about it and to register so that you can join us March 8th and 9th is events.channelpronetwork.com.
Yeah, I'll put a graphic up on the screen so that way you can get a fast track to register. So if you're interested in any of the 2023 events, you can also go to channelproforum.com/2023. That'll take you right to the registration page for a particular event. Go and use promo code CP Weekly. That will bypass any reg fees to get you in the door. Definitely join us. Because the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire game show session turned out really good. It was one of the favorites that we had at the event. Many people commented on it that said it was really good. And also, the Rich didn't, he kind of like buried this, but the session that he leads that he's talking about making cloud first business is also styled in the vein of Unsolved Mysteries. And he's actually wearing like a beige like trench coat, like what Robert Stack would wear on the show back in the 90s. It's you just that reason alone, you have to go and check out these events, because it's we have a lot of fun and you get a lot of great information. So make sure you go and do that. Join us for any of those. Rich, we got a couple of virtual events coming up too. Why don't we just tell about those real quick?
Well, the next one coming up is in April. I don't have the date off the top of my head. You'd have to look that up. But our next virtual event is early in April, and that is our first cybersecurity online summit event of this year. We'll be doing 2 of those this year in 2023. Got one coming up here in just about a couple of months.
Yeah, that's April 18th. And the cybersecurity summits are always a hit. Lots of great stuff. Don't miss that. I'll also give a plug. We have a kind of a sister brand here at ChannelPro called Find Biometrics. And they're having they're one of their online events coming up on February 15th. It's the road ahead for biometrics and identity. So if you're doing it, if you're toying with anything with secure access, with biometrics, with identity, interested in that at all, go check it out. I think you'll get a lot out of that event as well. And you can find links to all those at the links that we gave you a little while ago. So go and check those out. So Jamison, sorry that we had to go through all that stuff, but I'm excited. Catch everybody up. I'm excited you're here, and you present at many of our events. I'm not going to tell you what to say. I'm just going to say if someone was on the fence about going to a ChannelPro event, what would you tell them?
Go.
Plain and simple, just go. Just go. Yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, I like the format. It's a busy day, but you guys do a great job. It's fun and there's a plenty of time to kind of balance between getting great information from the folks who hop on stage and getting to network and connect with people over lunch and afterwards. So, I've always enjoyed them. I appreciate you guys having me be part of them in the past. Yeah, it's been great.
Absolutely. And I'm sure you will be part of them in the future as well. But I want to say, one, thanks for coming back on the show again. For those who maybe missed an earlier episode where you joined us, please tell us a little bit more about you and a little bit more about what you do.
Sure, absolutely. So just kind of a professional background resume thing. Bio, 21 years, owned an IT service company up in Seattle, an MSP. Acquired a few others and then sold it, which was great. Wrote a book about that called The Emotional Side of Selling a Small Business. Kind of, there's a lot of books out there that talk about valuations and legalese and all this other stuff, but nobody really talked about the trials and tribulation, the roller coaster that an owner goes through when they sell that business they raised and grew, and impacts their family and everything else. So, and their employees and clients. So that's what the book was about. I then went on to co-found a few software companies, Team Addicts, Smileback, and TimeZest. Divested myself of Team Addicts. Smileback, I mentioned earlier in the show, sold to ConnectWise a couple of years ago. And really having a lot of fun right now with TimeZest, which is growing pretty fast with calendaring solutions for IT service companies, integrating to various PSA platforms and Office 365. But I spend most of my time really coaching owners and senior executives for primarily technology companies, MSPs and the like, helping them, make sure that they're getting what they want out of the business. They're growing it, they're putting systems in place to mature it and get more value. And I just love doing that. So we have several coaches around the world that are doing great stuff in that regard. Yeah, so that's my focus these days. Also starting to really help MSPs think about our kind of newest take right now. We're starting to lean into helping IT companies find talent that they can't find locally. So that's been a big push of ours lately, is helping folks find talent that is off, virtual talent that's not necessarily across the street. That's been a challenge for so many people in the IT services industry for a while. And well, when people get that right, it's huge.
So there are lots of business owners, MSPs out there that probably don't have a business coach. When is the right time for someone to consider a business coach? And how do they strike up the relationship? How does that start? What would their expectations be that may be right or wrong? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think, so the word coach is a tricky one, right? Because it can mean a lot of things. So I'll tell you let me approach it a slightly different way. I started kind of getting into this I implemented the EOS entrepreneurial operating system into my business, and I loved it. And it set well with me. Again, I'm an atypical guy in this channel. I was never an engineer or computer guy. I went to University of Washington Business School. I was an entrepreneur, just like computers. So I understood more the business side. I understand it much better than the technology. I'm a geek. But so what ultimately happened, I started implementing EOS, and I realized that the people I was helping were like, okay, well, that doesn't really do any strategy work, so I'm going to hire somebody else to do strategy work. And I really need somebody to grow this leader. They need some coaching, so I'm going to hire a coach. And they ended up having 3 or 4 people in there, and none of them could spell MSP. And then you're kind of like, wait a minute, we can be way more holistic and kind of do all of this. So that was kind of what we built this platform around. Ended up leaving the EOS group because they were very stringent and restricted on, we just help people execute, we don't do any of this other stuff. And so we find that there's a lot of other people in this space, in the IT services vertical, that do operations really well, or sales, and they kind of are departmental focused, but nobody was really talking to the owners and executives and saying, hey, let us help you run your business and get what you want out of it better. So we think we have a kind of a unique offering in that regard. And it is tricky to find, we're just trying to get the word out that people need this kind of stuff. I think typically people hear the more well-known oh, I'm going to do scaling up or EOS or something, they hear that. That's not really business coaching, but it's starting to go down that road of saying, I don't need to go this alone. I can pull other people in to help. And then, and as soon as they get a little bit of a taste of that, they want more, because they realize that with that help and another ear that they can, lean on, it helps a lot.
So how many clients can you kind of take on at once who need business coaching? Because I have to imagine that it gets probably kind of demanding, especially in the beginning, but maybe less so as time goes on.
Yeah, we have a kind of a different service. So we do a couple things. I think any individual coach, if they're just doing one-on-one coaching, and the way that we approach it, we do a lot. And so it's a recurring monthly thing, and we do quarterly meet, we do all the stuff, right? And if I have 10 clients, I'm pushing my capacity individually. So we have multiple coaches that are handling clients. It's a heavy load, but it's like anything, you want to learn how to scale that. So we want to deliver that value to more people than we're able to with our coaches. And so we're starting group coaching now, where it's like maybe 6 or 7 folks want to do like we're doing like a 3-month, a 2-day boot camp. So it's 2 days in person and then deep weekly work, trying to scale the messaging and the value to people who want to drink from a fire hose and do it fast, as opposed to getting long-term coaches. There's a lot of teaching and group coaching, and then kind of rolls into ongoing accountability with those folks, which is great. So we're figuring out how to scale it more. And I think every coaching firm, I've talked to so many folks who've started coaching firms to try to figure out how they scale their value. And it's hard, because you get a lot of value in one-on-one interactions. So how do you scale one-on-one interactions? Difficult thing to do, but we're finding ways.
So is it all one-on-one, or do you ultimately kind of bring some of your clients together for more peer-to-peer kind of discussion?
Principally today, it's been primarily one-on-one, but we're working towards that pretty rapidly right now, trying to find ways to communicate with each other online. But then now rolling into that kind of, hey, let's bring a group together who all want to start something together, bring them together for 2 days, get to know each other, really start collaborating, and then go through this weekly process for 3 months to dig very, very deep. And then they become kind of an accountability group afterwards. So that's kind of exciting. Not kind of exciting, very exciting, because I think we can deliver a lot more to a lot more folks that way.
So you got the coaching thing going on, and then like on the side, you're the CEO of this little like calendaring solution.
I moved to chairman of TimeZest, and it was little. It's not as little anymore. It was little when I got on the show the first time. And I was CEO then. Jerway Todd, great guy, ex-ConnectWiser for over a decade, is the full-time CEO, and I've moved to chairman of the board. He's rocking it. And then we have our technical co-founder, Jason, in Berlin, and the three of us are driving it. And I run, I'm about a day a week on that software platform, on that business, really with a kind of a strategic hat on and with a financial hat on. So I treat it a lot like I would one of my ConnectStrat clients, right? Which is actually wonderful. It's just that I was a co-founder, so there's equity involved but I do really enjoy that work. And it's been a lot of fun. It's watching the industry, figuring out the problems that this industry has and developing a software solution for it's just been phenomenal, right? And you see so much of that going on right now. So many people solving big problems with cool solutions.
So go ahead, Rich. Sorry.
Well, I want to quickly, for the sake of the audience, I still remember when TimeZest was brand new, Jamison, and I ran into you at the ConnectWise IT Nation event that year. And what's TimeZest? And you summed it up perfectly in just a few words. You said this is Calendly for MSPs. Yeah. So anyone in the audience out there who has ever wished they could just send somebody a link, book time with me, and so you don't have all that back and forth, and it's very convenient for the end user, and it's saving you. That's what TimeZest does. And you announced it at IT Nation because it integrated with ConnectWise. Is it ConnectWise only still, or do you?
Nope, we're on Autotask, right? And now what we're really excited about, we're going to more PSAs. We're developing a couple other PSA integrations right now, but Autotask and ConnectWise PSA. And what we're really excited about right now is we've got a native integration to Office 365. So anybody on Office 365 can now use our platform. You don't have to be on ConnectWise or Autotask anymore. So, and principally we're selling to IT service companies. That's who our focus is absolutely on, deep integration and workflow that you can't get through Calendly or Microsoft Bookings. We want to build this product in a way that makes that workflow well. But you run into salespeople and executives who are like, yeah, but I don't use ConnectWise Calendar. I'm using Outlook. So now we can go to an MSP and say, okay, well, yeah, but you can still schedule time with an engineer who's in ConnectWise while you're on Outlook, or, and your salesperson can put a link on the website to book a sales meeting, and they're all using the same platform. So really excited that we solved for that, because that's what a lot of our customers were asking for. And it allows us to start branching into some interesting things. So, yeah.
Very, very interesting. So as a coach, you kind of get to set your own schedule. So what are you doing these days outside of the consulting and TimeZest things? Are you traveling a little bit more? Are you
traveling a lot? Had a couple great trips this year. Randomly ended up in Colombia I thought I was going to Costa Rica, ended up in Colombia for a week, and that was a lot of fun. Spent about 12 days in the Philippines, never been there. That was amazing. So got engaged in the Philippines, which was also amazing. And with our new blended family, had all 5 of our kids. I have 2, she has 3, all together for Christmas. It was amazing. So yeah, different year and lots of changes personally, and really enjoying it.
Well, I fly to Houston and drive to Dallas, and you're like landing in foreign countries that you're not expecting to go to. So that's certainly very adventurous. I was going to ask you about your engagement. So just tell us a little bit about that. Like, how'd that go? How'd you do it? Did she first say no, and then you had to convince her?
Yeah, she said yes. That's what matters, right? She said yes. Yeah, on the beach in Boracay in the Philippines. She's half Filipino. She hadn't been back in many, many, many years. So we went together, and the day we landed, I proposed. So it was pretty awesome. Wanted to spend the trip there celebrating it, so I didn't wait to the end. And yeah, it was phenomenal. So
very cool. I've never been to the Philippines. So any particular place you went that you would want to recommend to people?
Yeah, so Boracay is pretty well known there as a popular vacation spot. Small island, and it's just kind of like just like a boardwalk, a beach, and beautiful sunsets every day. So it was just an absolutely amazing place. And then the latter half of the trip, I went to Palawan, which was just like remote islands. We stayed at this really kind of cool resort that nobody, like 50 people stay at, and scuba diving, and it just that whole area. There's a really remote, the airport, like you land in the airport and it's like on the beach, and it's like, am I in a resort or an airport? It's very bizarre. But I loved it. It was great. I never thought I'd make a special trip to the Philippines, and it just turned out great.
Well, that's fascinating, and congratulations on the engagement. That's very exciting. I hope you'll keep us up to date on that process. Did you set a date, or are you still figuring?
Haven't set a date yet. We're thinking about it. We're figuring it out.
I'm sure wherever you do it, it's going to be probably in some awesome location far away with beautiful sunsets and beaches. You're a fascinating guy, Jamison. I could ask you questions all day long because you are very, very intriguing. But we have got to move on, and boy, oh boy, do we got some exciting stuff coming up on this episode. We're going to be talking about Kaseya. They got some news out. We're going to be talking about a change of position for a very prominent figure in the industry. I'm not going to spoil it. You're going to have to stick around to see who that's about. We're going to be talking about ScalePad. We've got an awesome article that we're going to talk about called "Avoiding Burnout," something that we could probably all use a little bit of advice and guidance on. Later on in the show, we're going to be joined by Emma Werth. She's the regional VP of underwriting at Cowbell Cyber. It's going to be a fascinating interview. We're going to get some cyber insurance updates on that industry, that market, and we're going to kind of get their take on the industry as well, which might be very different from your take. So that'll be interesting as well. And of course, Jamison will be with us the whole time. We'll pepper him with questions as we go and get his thoughts. It's going to be exciting. Rich, Kaseya is in the news. They've got some. Oh, I bet this is something that everyone was expecting. What did they do?
Well, what they did. So, newsflash, people. Kaseya bought Datto last year.
What?
Yeah. It made all the headlines. So Datto has been a business unit within Kaseya for some time now. At the time of that transaction, there were a lot of things actually that Datto did and had that Kaseya didn't, like a networking business, for instance. But one of the things Datto had and Kaseya didn't was a partner program with tiers and qualifications and benefits and so on. And so from the standpoint of a Kaseya partner, one of the nice things about Kaseya buying Datto is Kaseya made a point of saying right from the get-go, you're going to have a partner program to belong to and get some benefits from. So last week, just as I was winging my way down to Dallas, in fact, Kaseya announced the launch of a new unified partner program for both Kaseya and Datto, and they're actually officially calling it the Kaseya plus Datto Global Partner Program. It is heavily modeled. They basically took the Datto Partner Program. They kind of tweaked the requirements and the benefits somewhat, but it looks a lot like the Datto Partner Program for folks who are familiar with that. So 4 tiers: silver, gold, platinum, blue, diamond. By the by, Kaseya has already said that at some point relatively soon, within the next few weeks, they're going to add a 5th tier, which will be called Blue Diamond Elite. Qualify for Blue Diamond, you have to be in the top 5% for Kaseya and Datto in aggregate spending across their product lines. To qualify for Blue Diamond Elite, when that becomes available, you got to get into the top 2%. And we'll see when they announce that what kind of extra goodies you get as a result of that. One of the significant things from the standpoint of a Datto partner from before the acquisition, who was also buying some stuff from Kaseya, is you're now getting credit towards those spending thresholds for both your Datto spend and your Kaseya spend. So there are going to be some partners out there, Datto partners, who are going to jump up a level because now they're actually getting recognized for the money that they have been spending all on Kaseya products. One of the things that's really interesting about this, obviously, if you are a Kaseya partner and you like the sound of getting some benefits like 24/7, 365 customers support, access to what Kaseya calls their MSP enablement team, which is a bunch of folks who are just kind of there to help you be more successful in growing your business. Live technical webinars, free passes to industry events. So you get benefits that you weren't getting before, and in return for the money that you're spending with them. But what's also kind of significant about this to me is you go back to April of last year when the news first breaks that Kaseya is buying Datto, and there were a lot of really apprehensive Datto partners, and totally understandable. If you were really happy with Datto and now they're owned by this other company that not everybody is a huge fan of out there, you were maybe concerned that some of the things that you like at Datto would be going away. And Kaseya was really insistent right from the get-go. I actually had the first interview in the media with Fred Vokol, CEO of Kaseya, in April last year. Spoke with him again at their partner event, and over and over again, he reiterated, we are not going to be cutting things. If anything, we're going to be investing in Datto, and Datto partners are going to get more, not less. And what I was kind of saying a year ago, basically, was wait and see. Within the first 48 hours after this news breaks that Kaseya is buying Datto, I was at a big partner event actually, and I'm talking to MSPs who are like, I'm selling everything, I'm switching to a different vendor. I'm not on board with this. And my advice really was wait, see what they say, and then more importantly, see what they do. And what they have repeatedly said since April of last year is, we're going to be putting more money into this thing. You're going to get more if you're a Datto partner than you did before. Now, there may be people listening who are saying, well, but I'm getting less of something. There could be things going on that I'm just not hearing about on a day-to-day basis. But so far, Kaseya appears to be passing that test, basically. They said that we'll be investing big time in the partner program. They said we'll be investing big time in some of the benefits that go with being a partner. They have doubled the MDF budget that was available to Datto partners before. They have tripled the staffing for the partner program versus where it was with Datto. That MSP enablement team that I referred to before had 3 employees prior to the Datto acquisition. It has 60 now. So again, I think we're still a little bit in wait and see territory. But they really kind of went out of their way at Kaseya to say you don't have anything really to be worried about here. And so far, it looks like they are, in fact, investing rather than cutting.
So I'll say the first thing that I was kind of surprised about. How did Kaseya get as big as they did without having a partner program? Like the fact that they didn't have one, I think, is really weird. Everybody has those, but they went. Let's see, they went with the precious metals, and then they topped it with a gem. I don't know, is a blue diamond better than platinum? If you had to choose, maybe I'd pick a big slab of platinum. I don't know. I'm not really sure. What would you prefer? Would you want a blue diamond, Jamison, or would you want?
I go with the blue diamond. Well, wait.
I'm
not
look up the
sure.
value.
Well, personally, I think I'd take platinum, but the blue diamond sounds pretty cool. What's a blue diamond?
Blue diamonds? Is that actually a thing?
I think we asked the same question.
I don't actually know.
I'm not a mineralogist, so I'm not
We're
really
over
sure.
3. We don't know.
Yeah.
So okay, so there's a lot of good stuff here. I think the name is ridiculous. They just need to finally combine the companies and make it like Kaseya or Kaseya or something like that, because the whole plus thing is kind of weird. But lots of good in here. Jamison, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I heard the same things Rich was saying about, I'm out of here, whatever. And I think that the danger was, a lot of people, there was a lot of that on the street, and then not a lot of people actually acted. It was an emotional reaction. We hear these things a lot, but I agree with the wait and see. It's also, you don't want to sink your business off an emotional reaction to some kind of transaction you have nothing to do with, right? So I think a lot of people have settled, and they are mostly, and it's settled out. I think people watch. I think this partner program makes a tremendous amount of sense. It's kind of, I'm with you, Matt. I'm a little surprised they didn't have something similar. And actually, at the end of the day, it might have benefited them, because now they didn't have to change one program and take off a bunch of people. Now they inherit a good program and just make it one, and without anybody. I don't see why anybody would be upset by this. I don't see a negative in this particular program, except for the name.
Yeah, the name's kind of dumb, but I also agree. I think there are probably a lot of partners, like Rich said. If you're spending a lot of money with Kaseya and some of the other tools, and they've got a lot of other tools, they just are now instantly going to get credit for that, which is, I think, going to be a big win for anybody who's deep into the Kaseya stack. So that's good. Rich, any other thing? I mean, I'm not seeing a lot of negative here, not a lot of downside. Any other thoughts?
The only thing I'll chime in on is I'm thinking about it, and Jamison might know better or know as well, because we're all kind of saying, well, how could Kaseya not have had a partner program before? But if you look specifically at like RMM PSA vendor, like ConnectWise has this huge community that they invest a lot of resources in, and that benefits their partners in a lot of ways. But they don't necessarily have, the precious metal tiers, and if you spend X, you get Y kind of a thing. And I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head, I don't believe Enable does, like Ninja. It's in that particular segment of the market, the line of business tool for MSP segment, I don't actually know of a lot of partner programs.
Interesting. Well, maybe Kaseya is going to be breaking some new ground and setting some new trends. So I guess we will have to find out and see, but that might be something that people gravitate to. I don't know. But neat stuff. There's some links in the article here to go and learn a little bit more. If you are not part of the Datto program, I assume if you're in the Datto program, like, you're just automatically getting moved into this kind of stuff. Now, if you're not part of the Datto program using other Kaseya tools, do they have to go and register? Where do they go for that?
So I don't know the specifics on that, but yeah, I believe I don't think they just sort of enroll you there. So if you're not you're a Kaseya partner, you're not in the program, or you don't know, might be a good time to call your rep and find out.
Yeah, and we got some links in here. I'm sure someone will link off to more information on that. So folks, if you're watching on YouTube, open up the description area. Also hit the like button, hit the bell, hit the subscribe, hit all. There's a lot of buttons there. Just hit them all except the thumbs down. We do not like the thumbs down button. Avoid it. It might explode your PC. It might be filled with malware. You never know. So don't touch that one. If you're listening on your phone, open up the description area there. We're going to put links to all of these stories, so that way you can get more details, because we're just kind of covering them high level and giving our thoughts. But there's lots more information here. There's links to learn more. Go and check those out, and that'll be true of all of these different stories that we talk about. So make sure that you kind of have these up while we're discussing. The next one, Rich, is a big one. There's a particular prominent industry figure who is joining a new place, and where this man goes, success seems to follow. Also a former Dattoite, if I remember correctly. I believe that's where he made his name. So, Rich, who's going where and why?
Yeah, well, so this is further fallout from Kaseya buying Datto. Rob Ray, longtime senior vice president of business development at Datto, played a really kind of core role in helping Datto attract and retain MSPs. One of the most recognized names, basically, in managed services. And so one of the things people were wondering about after Kaseya bought Datto is, what does the future hold for Rob? And there was a bit of a clue to that. I mean, Rob did, he went above and beyond to really be on board with this transaction and to reassure Datto partners and so on. Initially, what Kaseya was saying, because Tim Wiener, I'm probably getting that wrong, but the CEO of Datto left as soon as that transaction was announced. Rob stayed. And in fact, officially, he was running Datto for Kaseya after that transaction happened. But if you looked really carefully, you noticed that anytime he was quoted in the media and so on, his title was still Senior Vice President of Business Development. Like all the other heads of the business units at Kaseya are general manager of this or that. It's like Rob never really bothered to update his business card. So it was kind of clear he's probably going to see this transition through and then move on and try something else. Last October, in fact, he did go ahead and leave Kaseya, and then that sparked like the biggest question in the SMB channel, maybe, one of the biggest of 2022, which is, where is he going? And given his legacy of success, both at Datto and at Level Platforms, the RMM, one of the RMM pioneers before that, there were a lot of companies interested in bringing him on board. And he told me he spoke with dozens of different companies, everything from startups to very big and established industry giants. The company in the end he decided to join was cloud distributor Pax8. And so Rob is now the corporate vice president of community and ecosystems at Pax8. His role will be very similar to what he was doing at Datto. He's all about building community and fostering community and ties among MSPs, helping MSPs be more successful. If you have been to, are a fan of the DattoCon events, you're familiar with Rob being on stage a lot at those shows and just playing a big influential role in those shows. Pax8 has its first ever partner conference, at least in-person conference, coming up in June this year, and Rob is going to be a big part of that. That's going to be part of his job. It's interesting because Pax8 is a business that already had a pretty good reputation with MSPs. Its partners have that kind of regard and confidence in it that Datto partners have towards Datto. And so from a certain perspective, it's like, well, how much can Rob do to sort of improve things if they were already good for Pax8? But from Rob's standpoint, he really wanted to make sure that he lands at a company that is as invested in MSPs as Datto was. And so to him, it was really an attraction that he likes the culture, he likes the leadership team, he loves, obviously, the market. I mean, cloud computing is a great place to be right now. And he believes in their commitment to MSPs, that value kind of aligns with him. So this felt like a great place for him to land. And Pax8 remains a rocket ship. The growth story at Pax8 is a whole different conversation that we can have, but I'll just quote you one number to give you an idea of the kind of success they've had in recent years, and this couldn't have hurt it either when Rob was kind of evaluating his options. The cumulative 3-year revenue growth rate at Pax8, so adding up growth across the last 3 years, is 1,130%. And which is, by the way, down a little bit, that over time, as you're building from a larger base, it's hard to kind of maintain that sort of a number. That's how successful Pax8 has been. And it's one more good reason for somebody like Rob Ray to say, hey, let me in.
Well, that's a lot of percents. a big number of them. You were one of the first, I think, to speak to Rob Ray on this. You had an exclusive. He also wasn't in, believe it or not, of all the people that were in Dallas in the ice rooms, he was actually there at our event, which was really great to see him and catch up there. So what did he tell you, Rich, about some of his thought processes? I'm not sure how deep your conversation went, but what came out of that?
No, I mean, I've sort of, covered a lot of it because I was just curious, so here's a guy who could pretty much write his ticket, right? I mean, almost any business in the industry, any kind of business. And I was sort of curious, would he be interested in going to a much smaller company, younger even than Pax 8, and get a substantial kind of equity share and just because he started very early at Datto, and I know he did very well financially there, but did he maybe see an opportunity to really have a bigger ownership share in a startup, for example, or was he looking for a mature company where he could kind of step in? He had every option you can imagine in front of him, and there was a lot of speculation that Pax 8 would be would be where he winds up going. And sure enough, it was, and it just I guess it felt like most like a cultural fit for him of the places that he looked at.
It's also worth noting too, he briefly in Dallas took a small position with ChannelPro as one of our phone a friend options during our Who Wants to Be a Millionaire game. So big thanks to Rob Ray for joining us for that. It was a short-lived position, but he did a fantastic job and was really interesting. Jamison, I'm sure you know who Rob Ray is, and I'm sure you
know Rob. Yeah,
I think most people know who Rob Ray is. What do you think? Is Pax 8 a neat choice? What do you see coming out of that?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. For all the reasons Rich said, I know Rob. He's a great guy and did great work at Datto. I mean, obviously, he knows how to partner. He knows how to connect with not only MSPs and owners and it resonates. His messaging resonates, but he also knows how to partner with collaborators, other partners, and even competitors in the industry in a way that sometimes people don't do that very well in this industry. But Rob's been, I've kind of watched how that's worked, and I think Rob's just been exceptional in that regard. And then like Rich said, Pax 8's kind of a golden child distributor in the cloud. It's it has pretty strong reputation. They're investing a lot, they're acquiring, and they're growing, and it honestly not surprised to see Rob there.
Yeah, and I think their conference in June is going to be a hot ticket now. Come after this announcement, so get your tickets in early, I guess. But very good. Congrats to Rob. We'll be obviously be following his career as he moves around and see what he does at Pax 8. Rich, any other thoughts on this one before we move on?
No, it's another one of those wait and see kind of things. If you're a Pax 8 partner, you can anticipate there's going to be new stuff, more stuff, something, and it'll just be really interesting to watch how that unfolds.
It will. All right. Well, we got one more news story left, and that is about ScalePad. They've acquired. We're seeing lots of consolidation. Anybody who's listened to ChannelPro Weekly for a while knows that there is no shortage of consolidation in the IT industry and between different vendors. So we've got another one of these. ScalePad acquired who?
They acquired a company called Cognition 360. And, the truth of the matter is, Matt, there have been fewer of these acquisition stories in recent months. And interest rates are higher. A lot of these deals are financed partly or heavily with debt. And when that gets more expensive, you see less M&A activity, among vendors or among MSPs, et cetera. But it didn't slow ScalePad down from making another acquisition. They bought a company called Cognition 360. And what those guys do, it's a reporting platform. They pull anonymous data from 100 million or so ConnectWise PSA tickets, and it allows them basically to collect insights in terms of agreement and customer profitability, technician efficiency, service delivery. And so if you're a Cognition 360 user, you can sort of benchmark yourself against peers in certain ways. How are you doing on average agreement profitability, et cetera? So that's what they're doing now. They were actually, Cognition 360 was apparently already in the process of extending beyond ConnectWise to Autotask before they were acquired. That work continues. There are other PSAs, I think, on the roadmap, so it won't be a ConnectWise only kind of thing. By the end of this year, you will at least see Autotask represented as well. Before that happens, there will be some other things. ScalePad has some other applications. I'll talk about that in a second. And so they're going to, standardize the interface on the Cognition 360 system, unify the billing and some of that stuff. Then they're going to start integrating Cognition 360 with the earlier ScalePad system. So I'll give you a very quick little history of ScalePad because you might know them better as Warranty Master. So they started out basically, they did one thing, hardware asset management. If you've got to keep track of warranty renewal dates and then deal with the expired warranties and maybe extend them, they were all about that. In 2020, they add software asset management. And at that point, the Warranty Master name was no longer applicable, so they changed to ScalePad. And as they like to say at the time, and I never tire of repeating, they were doing hardware asset management and software asset management, or Ham and Sam. So they were a Ham and Sam company at that point.
Did they ever sell green eggs at the time?
Not that I'm aware of. It was wide open to them to do that. And then, just by the by, I'm not going to get into this in any great detail. Late in 2021, they introduced a digital asset maturity tool, and then they were Ham, Sam, and Dam. But the other thing they acquired at the same time they rolled out that digital asset maturity tool. They also acquired a company called Backup Radar, which is basically a multi-tenant, multi-vendor BDR control panel. So, there's actually research recently from Axient on this. The average MSP is working with more than one BDR vendor, 3, 4, 5. If you don't want to have to keep going to a bunch of different management consoles, Backup Radar is going to or is designed to consolidate all that. So it's the one pane of glass for all the BDR systems that you use, and they integrate with like 300 companies or something like that. It's an interesting evolution, though, right? I mean, so that you can easily see the transition from managing warranties to managing, like software as a service subscriptions. There are some real similarities there. The Backup Radar tool and a reporting tool, it's a little bit different, and the theme basically to these acquisitions that they're making, and they're making more, by the way, because one of the things that they announced alongside buying Cognition 360 is that they have now hired an executive who is just their M&A person. So they took a non-controlling equity share, or sold a non-controlling equity share to a company last year, I believe it was. They've got some money to spend. They intend to spend it. And the common theme in these deals is going to be they're looking for headaches and pain points that they can kind of help automate and standardize and make more profitable. And then they're looking for opportunities for these different systems that they make to share data. And that's where the Cognition 360 piece kind of plays in. So they know a whole lot now about an end user's hardware assets and their software assets and their backup environment, and you combine that information that they're collecting with all of these integrations, the 300 integrations they acquired along with Backup Radar, and the 40-ish integrations they have through the earlier ScalePad. You combine all of that, and they're starting to put together this pretty deep pool of data that they can now turn into a business intelligence resource that maybe will make people more profitable and more successful as well. So it's a very different kind of business that they're building at ScalePad. I can't really think of anyone to compare them to exactly, but you can kind of see how the pieces are starting to come together.
Well, Jamison, they're looking for pain points. Maybe they're going to come after TimeZest next.
They might. I know, it's really interesting. In a good group of people. I think I like when you see folks like Dan and Aaron Kennedy, and then one other name that was on that article, which I didn't know about, Tyrek, and I've done a fair amount of work with him. He's a super smart guy. I like him a lot. Is Dennis Bernhauser. He was I guess named their COO. I did not know that until I read the article, and it's a you see all those brains get together in a room, and I'm like, okay, this is gonna get interesting. It's a good group of folks, so that'll be fun to watch.
And who knows? Maybe they'll get into green egg integration. They can have green eggs and ham and Dan. Sam, I don't know. We'll have to see how that goes. But cool. Lots of stuff in the article. I'm sure there's a whole lot more to really discuss here. But if you want to go and read that, check it out. But we're running a little long, so we're going to move on to our next thing, because I really want to talk about this one, because it's an important issue in the IT channel, in the IT industry, and among MSPs and their employees, and that is the concept of burnout. So, Rich, how are we addressing burnout? Do we have an article about it? Maybe.
We absolutely do. And it,
what do you know? How did I know
in
that?
The most recent issue of our magazine? We're going to link to it from the show notes so you can read it. There's lots of good stuff in there. You know, we have written about it, ChannelPro. We have talked before on this podcast about physical health and how important that is to building and maintaining success over the long term. You want to be good to yourself that way. But we really haven't spoken so much about mental health. And obviously the last few years have been a little bit stressful, maybe for a lot of people, not even just in the IT world, but for everybody, for all the various obvious reasons. And that creates the potential for burnout. That contributes to this phenomenon that was a little bit overblown in the media, but very real, called quiet quitting, and so on. And so we dedicated a story to burnout and identifying it and avoiding it, specifically for channel pros out there. And right at the beginning of the story, they cite some data from Aflac. 59% of American workers say that they're experiencing at least moderate levels of burnout. Now, that's a self-assessment. What do we mean by burnout exactly? One of the sources the writer consulted for this story said burnout is ongoing and unmanageable job-related stress. So it's not that you're tired or you're stressed out. It's that it's reached a point where you are no longer functioning as well as you wish to be, as you used to be. And very common symptoms are exhaustion, whether that's emotional or physical or psychological, or quite often all three. It's when the physical fatigue starts becoming mental or emotional fatigue, that's a sure sign of burnout. Being short-tempered or impatient with people, having trouble concentrating, having a sense of hopelessness, that just there's nothing I can do about the problems that I'm experiencing in this job. All of these are symptoms of burnout. We don't even really need to belabor the point around the things that may be contributing to burnout, specifically in the managed services realm, in terms of working from home and maybe not having some of that community support that you can get, and commiserating with your coworkers quite the same way that you can get when you're in the office. All the supply chain disruptions and unhappy customers, all the same that we've heard about waiters and waitresses at restaurants and flight attendants getting battered and bruised by stressed out, burned out customers. I'm sure that's happening to techs as well. So the question is, what do you do about burnout? And the two key things basically are be aware and be proactive. And so first of all, be aware. So watch for it. Are you seeing some of those behaviors I was talking about before? Are people being short-tempered and impatient and snippy with one another at the company? Are they getting a little, losing their temper with customers when they never did something like that? Keep an eye out, and don't hesitate to meet with your people one-to-one and kind of ask them, on a scale of 1 through 10, how much burnout are you experiencing right now, and what do you think is maybe causing that, to the extent that you're feeling that? And that's going to vary person to person, so there's no one simple kind of rule in terms of how you fix burnout. But knowing that it's happening, doing your best to identify the sources, and then working on a one-by-one basis with your employees to kind of help them overcome whatever those issues are sort of the keys identified in this story to preventing burnout from costing you a valuable employee or costing you productivity, which can easily happen if you're just not looking for it.
I am really excited to get Jamison's thoughts on this, because I have to imagine, Jamison, that as you work with customers, your clients, as you coach them, this has got to be a prevalent issue that you see with many of your clients. Oh, I think you're on mute. I think you muted.
It's bound to happen sometime. I only went on mute twice this whole call, and that was one of them.
No
It is. It's and I think that I have more the perspective typically of the owner or a very senior executive than maybe a technician. And it helped us say, but resonated for me when Rich said, like a waiter or a flight attendant. Certainly, I mean that's going to impact at that level too, right? Like it's not just their own stresses, but part of being in the service business, which essentially MSPs are, is that you kind of become the brunt of other people's frustrations and all of this, and it contributes. I think it was a bit of a roller coaster with a lot of extra stressors over the last few years, and with the pandemic and with everything else going on with the economy now and everything else. So certainly less certainty in your model and your budget and your forecast. So you think from an owner's perspective, that just isn't, you add on the financial stressor of not having a consistent salary and going, wait a minute, I live off my distributions or whatever. And then I don't know if I'm going to get PPP. And then it comes in and says that it has been kind of the most significant ups and downs in terms of volatility or at least even if it wasn't actual perceived volatility over the last few years, that's created an amount of uncertainty and stress that I've not seen, which contributes to burnout. Because eventually, when you don't know, you don't feel in control. I mean, you feel out of control and you can't do anything about it. You start to shut down. So I've definitely seen that across some of our clients. Yeah, absolutely.
And are your clients, I'm sure many of your clients are dealing with a lot of the staffing issues that most companies are dealing with right now. So are they having to deal a lot with like their employees kind of coming to them with burnout, or how are they dealing with that?
Yeah, I mean, and the staffing stuff has been interesting as well, right? Because you have people leave, people not come back really hard. Everybody's overpaying a year ago. Now it's getting a little easier. It's been a lot of that. People are starting to figure out how to use talent that's maybe not local, because the whole work from home, I'm not coming back, didn't just, now all of a sudden people are like, wait a minute, there's opportunity and challenges, right? So there's a lot of opportunity and challenges. People are viewing that differently. But yeah, what I've seen is a lot for my clients who've really been focused on the well-being of their people. They're in a good place right now. Their culture is strong, and people are less. I think the pandemic created a lot of unwillingness to just tolerate an environment you didn't want to be in. People are kind of forced to go, wait, what's really important to me? And now they're looking for other things. All right, what's important to them? Culture, work-life balance, or whatever those things are. And so the clients of ours that have taken care of their people in that regard have really benefited from the last few years of doing that and creating a place that I started with a client yesterday. They had somebody leave a year ago, and then it was like, well, grass isn't greener. I'm back, right? And that's starting to. We're seeing people really retain their good people if they treat them well, and I think this is part of it. I think 5 years ago, and it's not just, it's every industry, but you see it in the MSPs, is like rigid. Everybody works inside these four walls every day from 9 to 5, and it's not everybody, but a large percentage are like, wait, our customers aren't doing more. We're not doing. We can work remotely. Some days, flex schedules, or some people can be virtual all the time. Whatever. There's a lot of change in how people are allowing folks to show up.
Yeah, interesting. Maybe actually that should have been Datto's highest level tier rather than Blue Diamond. It should have been the green grass tier, right? Because the grass is always greener, right? So that's right. Like the end goal. Get to the green grass. Yeah, it's a really good article. There's lots of good info in here. Lots of good thoughts. Rich, any other insights you want to highlight, or you just want to send folks off to go check it out?
I would send folks off to check it out, and I would just re-emphasize that if this sounds squishy, this is actually a really important piece of running your business these days, because of the labor shortages out there. And as Jamison was saying, basically, this applies at least as much to you as the person running the business as it does to the people who are working for you. So this is worth, this topic is something that's really worth putting some time into.
Very good. Well, yeah, we'll go and check that out, folks. Go and read that. But Rich, I believe that takes us to the end of our stories. But there's a lot more ahead, folks. We're gonna take a short break. When we come back, we're gonna be joined by Emma Werth. She's the regional VP of underwriting at Cowbell Cyber. Very interesting conversation on cyber insurance, and of course, this is affecting everybody in the industry right now. So you will not want to miss a moment of it. We will be right back. Are you an MSP who is recommending Dell hardware to your end users? If so, then you'll want to check out the Dell Expert Network. The new Dell Expert Network program is a rewards and incentives program designed for service-focused MSPs who are supporting the small business market. This program is designed to deliver value and save time for MSPs who are recommending their end users to purchase Dell hardware. Currently, Dell Expert Network customers get an additional 3% back in Dell rewards when they buy Microsoft servers. Check out the Dell Expert Network today. And welcome back to part 2 of this episode of ChannelPro Weekly. We've got an amazing guest interview lined up for you. Really excited about it because we've had their CEO on the show before in 2020, several years ago. And we've got a lot to talk about today and a lot to catch up on the topic. So change is inevitable in the IT industry, and one area we've seen major changes in the last few years in particular is in cyber insurance, namely how it's getting increasingly more difficult to obtain and significantly more expensive. Many point the finger at the big bad insurance companies, saying it's all their fault. But is it? Now, here to talk about the state of the cyber insurance market today from an insurer's point of view is Emma Werth, the Regional Vice President of Underwriting at Cowbell Cyber. Welcome, Emma.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here.
It's great to have you on the show. Like I mentioned, we had the CEO on the show back in 2020, a long time ago. And that was really kind of when the whole cyber insurance industry was starting to change, and we've seen just a rapid evolution since then. And it's really great to have you on to talk about that and to see where cyber insurance is today. But before we get started, many may not have caught that episode before, or maybe they have no idea what cyber insurance is because they've had their head stuck in the sand for the last 2 years. So tell us a little bit more about you in particular and a little bit more about Cowbell Cyber.
Yeah, so I've been in this space for a handful of years, worked for both larger, more traditional carriers as well as MGAs. So I am not new to the market, but the market is changing a little bit. And Cowbell, I think, started at a really, some would say interesting time, but I think a really good time at the kind of beginning of the hard market, really bringing in a new kind of tech outlook on cyber insurance. A lot of the traditional carriers look at it really through a paper app and a more traditional lens. And Jack had a really different idea of how cyber insurance should be sold as well as evaluated. And so that's what we have. And it's exciting to see it evolve through the years. And as the market's changing, how it's evolving. Our big thing is to consistently really be underwriting throughout the year. It isn't a once a year process. It's something we're consistently and continually evaluating our insureds and growing a partnership with them.
So I'm really curious because I have to admit, I don't know a lot about insurance other than that I give lots of money to insurance companies and it just seems to disappear and I never see it again. What does an underwriter actually do?
Yeah, so this is one I get a lot, or people just glaze over when I tell them what I do. So used to it. So what we do is we evaluate and price risk. So it looks different in different lines. And I would say cyber in particular is a very different line from your more traditional types of insurance. But we get submissions in from brokers and we really assess that risk based on controls they personally have in place and then what we typically see in that industry. So we look at that, we think about what exposures where they're likely to have a loss, and what they've done to prevent the loss, and then we price and provide appropriate coverage accordingly.
So I am absolutely fascinated by this. It's very, very interesting. At what point in your path to career, like, were you a little girl looking up at the stars saying, I want to underwrite insurance contracts when I grow up? How do you fall into this?
Yeah, I think everybody does honestly just fall into it. I don't know many people that even went to college thinking they want to be in insurance. There are some, but I was a history major in college and went down, a different path and found my way into a state farm agent office. Was my kind of introduction to insurance. And it was the first, I would say, adult job I had that I didn't completely hate. So I stuck with it. And through my time there, I got to see kind of how different departments within an insurance company operate and got really interested in the underwriting space. So I moved around a little bit and got an opportunity. My first opportunity in underwriting was with a more traditional carrier. And I got a lot of background that way, and then kind of found my way to cyber and found my way into MGAs and kind of a disruption into the insurance space.
So you said it was the first job that you liked, like, let me use your words. It was the first job you didn't hate. So What were a couple of examples of jobs that you had before that you actually hated?
Yeah, so I worked actually similar space, but I worked for a bank, and it was just kind of too retail focused, too operational. It just didn't really feel like there was much there. I think what I liked about insurance was that there's always something different. Even if you're doing something that's a bit more traditional, like property and casualty, there's different kinds of losses. There's different trends based on your industry and all sorts of stuff. That kind of fascinated me, that it was not every day was the same. Kind of more accepted everyone as an individual, especially in like the sales and underwriting space. So that was enticing to me.
Very cool. And what's last question, then we'll move on to some other things. But what does an underwriter do for fun outside of the office? Like, I can't imagine you go home and play like like an insurance underwriting simulation game on your computer. So what do you actually do outside of that?
Yeah, so I live in New York City. I'm not from New York, so I love doing kind of cheesy touristy things. I love going around the city and going to different museums and parks. I have a German Shepherd that is 2 years old, so he keeps me pretty active. So parks, just outside in nature is kind of where I like to be.
Very cool. So give us one touristy attraction that you would recommend to someone who visits New York City.
So I really love the Natural History Museum. Chicago has a really good one too, but I am particular to ours in New York, and it has the planetarium, the Hayden Planetarium connected. So both of those together are a definite win.
Okay, and I lied. I'm going to ask one more question. Slight spin on that. One touristy attraction that many wouldn't know about, because a lot of people know about the New York History Museum. So something that you discovered that you didn't know about, or most people wouldn't know about.
Yeah. So as my time as a history major, there are some hidden art history museums, or like galleries, I guess you would call them, by the cloisters. You have to kind of look them up, but there's some like Gustav Klimt art that's in kind of hidden collections. That's kind of neat, and you'd have to kind of be in the know or know to look it up to really see those really awesome pieces of art.
So memo to myself, I want to get those names, those locations from you. My sister actually lives just a few blocks south of the Natural History Museum. I don't know if you're in that neighborhood, but I get out there, once a year or so, typically. And so, yeah, if there are art galleries in New York I didn't even know about, I want to hear about that. Yeah. But we can communicate on that later. Let's get into cyber insurance, because we've talked about it a ton in the last couple of years on this podcast. We've gotten input on that topic, mostly from MSPs, also to some extent from security vendors. But what I've been really looking forward to is getting a perspective on the industry and where it is and where it's going from the insurance side of things. So let's just kind of set the stage, kind of take a look at the landscape from an insurance company's point of view. what's it look like out there right now in terms of rates and how high they are, how quickly they're growing, claims volume? What's your take on the cyber insurance market right now?
Yeah, the wind is changing. It is a softening market as really the end of 2022 and into 2023. So rates are looking favorable for policyholders. It was significant rate. We were getting 2 to 3 digit percent, anywhere from 10 to 200% rate in previous years, specifically in cyber. And so that is really coming back down. I think a lot of the traditional carriers have worked hard in the hard market to kind of correct their books to get more profitable in this space. And we're seeing them coming back more competitive. So yeah, it's a positive time for a policyholder. For us though, it feels comfortable. We've got good rate in those harder years. And so, we're happy to get more to a competitive market, and we feel confident with where we are. In terms of claims, I would say it's been pretty consistent. It really hasn't been volatile, or we're not seeing it just continuously increasing. So again, it leads to us feeling comfortable with where we are at Cowbell.
So it sounds like certainly one of the factors responsible for rate growth slowing is that folks like yourself are getting more experience, better at pricing that risk. And so that you've reached a point where the rates aren't lower than they really need to be in terms of the security risk out there. But I'm curious if anything else kind of factors into that plateauing kind of phenomenon you're talking about, because questionnaires have gotten longer. Companies like Cowbell have forged alliances with security vendors. We'll talk about that in a bit. Are there other things happening or that have happened in the last couple of years that have helped kind of stem that growth in cyber insurance rates?
Yeah, I would say there's a couple kind of other factors. One is just more capacity in the marketplace. So there's been more entrants. And so as it's just kind of common supply demand. As there's more capacity, prices do come down. But I would say another significant one that was really demanded in the harder market was better controls across the board. We expected our insureds to really work hard to get their cybersecurity posture in a better place. And now as we're renewing those risks, they look far better. And so we don't need the rate we needed before. We're, in some ways able to reward them or keep things flat and help them out that way. So it's a better landscape for us than it was a couple years ago.
Now, this won't surprise you. There are a lot of MSPs who will say of cyber insurance companies that they are looking for any excuse to deny a claim. That they're happy to accept the premiums, but they're bending over backwards not to pay out and so on. That's just one example of a larger kind of phenomenon that I want to ask about from an insurance company, a cyber insurance company's point of view. What are the biggest misconceptions that a typical managed service provider might have about, cyber insurance companies and cyber insurance policies?
I would say you just mentioned a big one. I think the idea that we don't pay out is a large misconception. I think it's something that's larger than cyber insurance. It's a negative that's out in the world about insurance in general. But in the cyberspace, it's such a new product line that it really doesn't have much legal precedent. And so we find ourselves covering a wide net of losses just under that, careful consideration. When in doubt, payout is kind of the thought. So it's not that easy for us to deny a claim. And I would say certainly at Cowbell, it is very rare.
We talk about the change in the rate climate out there. Have cyber insurance products evolved in any particular way over the course of the last 2-3 years, just based on the experience companies like yours have now and maybe changes in the threat landscape?
It's a good question. I think at Cowbell, we do some pretty interesting things that I'm not sure if the other, what we call insurtechs really do. for us, we have what we call connectors. So we partner with different companies such as Trend Micro and Google and Microsoft. And what we do is we have our insureds log into those services and it connects us to them so we can see all the controls and activity in place. And it allows us a better idea of what their really like network looks like. So we get a better idea of what vulnerabilities they have, how we can assist them with that, what controls they have in place. If a new vulnerability comes available, like it's a new strand of ransomware or a new, we had the Microsoft Exchange server vulnerability a couple of years ago. So if something like that comes up, we can alert them and help them to mitigate that.
From a liability perspective, let me ask this real quick. If there is a vulnerability that's new that comes out of Microsoft and it hits customers that you have insured, does that become like a Microsoft liability, or who points the fingers at who if a customer gets hit in those cases?
It depends. It's the annoying legal response. But it depends on what happened, how it happened, and all of those pieces. So a lot of those liability claims regarding cyber come out of contracts in place. So, who is negligent in terms of their contract. It's kind of more tricky. I don't think in terms of the Microsoft Exchange, I don't think that came back to Microsoft. I think it's kind of circumstance, things happen and they're doing their best. But I'll admit I don't fully know. But yeah, what we see is there's certain vulnerabilities that come available with more outdated versions of a software or something along that line that make someone vulnerable to that. So it's not necessarily on Microsoft, it's more on the user to make sure they're patching properly and updating their software accordingly.
So what you're saying is that Jamison, businesses should get rid of or should maybe look at upgrading those old computers running, Windows 98 SE, for example.
Probably. That's probably a good idea. My Windows 3.1 machine's still doing a pretty good job.
Well,
that's an easy one because it doesn't have any networking at all. So there's really
it doesn't, it's not connected to anything. I was just kind of curious when you say, Emma, when you say connected to like Microsoft, Trend Micro, and these others, I'm sure like the first question that pops in my mind is an IT, or that my clients would ask from an IT service provider perspective. Are you looking at things in partnership with Microsoft across their platform? Or are you looking at their specific tenant, like coming in and saying, okay, here I am as an IT service provider, or maybe just any business, and I've got 100 mailboxes on Office 365, and I'm using all this stuff. And do you have like, how does that connection? What are you looking at? What do you have access to?
I think what we have access to depends on which one it is, but it's really supposed to be for that user. So, or for that company, I should say, of how many users do they have? What are their levels of access look like? What controls or activity? The Microsoft or Google ones are a little different than Trend Micro, just in how they operate, of us really trying to find out how many users, what kind of controls do you have in place to get into Microsoft? Different levels of admin access and regular, general user access and pieces like that, just to get a better idea than we maybe would from an application, or, especially in the small and middle market space. Sometimes those filling out the application don't have the best knowledge of what their IT structure looks like. And so it gives us a better idea. And then we can share that with them as well, that actually it looks more like this than originally thought.
So you ultimately you're a technology company as much of it as you are an insurance company. You're creating a great depth of integrations, and you're essentially doing assessments and audits across your clients to mitigate higher insurance rates, right? So
yes, and this year we're coming out with an adaptive cyber insurance product as well to kind of more support that idea of underwriting and evaluating the risk throughout the year. So as more connectors are found and as security posture improves through the year, we can assist our policyholders better, and there is the potential for better rates throughout the policy year.
Conversely, it could be for worse rates too. Like if somebody comes along and plugs in an unpatched Windows XP machine on the network, does it like red alert, lights go off and your insurance rate just skyrockets?
It won't do that. There will be like red alert for us and for them, but it won't be, it's more like if you put in those telematic devices from like Progressive or Geico, to see how you're driving. They limit how much they actually will make your insurance go up. So I wouldn't say your insurance will go up, but it will definitely incite a dialogue between us at Cowbell and the policyholders. So we're really looking to engage in that partnership and not making it so much insurer, but really working together, as well as with our connected vendors as well.
Speaking of which, I mean, out of curiosity, you spoke about the kind of data you can get from a Microsoft or a Google, and it sounded like the information you're getting from Trend Micro is maybe a little bit different. How is that relationship different?
Yeah, so they're more on the MSP side than the kind of more Google, Microsoft side. I'm not the most techie person, but yeah, so it's more tied to what services they're providing. And so it will differ a little bit from one insurer to another based on what products and solutions they're using. But it gives us a better idea of endpoint security and how they're monitoring and more of those pieces that are far more tied to what controls they have in place and how they're monitoring their system versus just how many users, do they have MFA for email and those more kind of larger, broader scope pieces.
The alliance between Trend Micro and Cowbell was one of the first of that kind that I at least became aware of. And I mean, I think you folks announced it less than a year ago. We're not even a year into the era of cyber insurance companies partnering with security vendors like Trend Micro and so on. Do you have any sense for what more you might like to get from vendors, what other kinds of vendors you might want to plug into, where this whole kind of trend of vendors and cyber insurers partnering and collaborating might go in the next couple of years?
I think it's going to become more commonplace. I think it's going to be something our competitors look to do as well. And I think it makes sense for this product. You have IT vendors looking to gain more access to policyholders, and we're trying to give them more access. So it seems like a natural partnership. We're working towards the same goal. We have expanded drastically how many vendors we partner with and are able to give, discounted rates and services to our insureds. So that will only grow and get better. And yeah, I anticipate more insurtechs as well as carriers to kind of follow suit as well.
So you assess risk. More risks means higher rates. What advice would you give to folks in the audience here about things that they can do to keep rates down, get their clients the best rates possible?
Yeah, I think a big one is to view your cyber insurance as a partner. So whoever your carrier, insurer is, really look for those, what we call value-added services, but look for those risk engineers. They really can help you modify specifically for your risk, your plan for, maybe you have a cybersecurity plan for 2023 into other years. Maybe you don't and you need help with that. But I think that's a big one really across the board in the market, is to see us as a partner and work alongside us. And, generally that is favored, honestly, and potentially in your rate as well.
One of the things I'm always curious about, because the cyber insurance conversation tends to be kind of a negative one. It's like, here's this expensive thing my customer has to buy, and I've got to help them fill out this giant questionnaire, and it's a burden. And I'm always interested in the possibility that somebody, an MSP who's thinking about this the right way, can actually turn it into more of an opportunity. Like, this can be some differentiated way for you to compete the way you handle cyber insurance somehow. I don't know if this is something you or the folks at Cowbell ever think about, but I mean, do you have any thoughts about how, partnering with a company like Cowbell, like you were kind of just saying, collaborating with them, that could position somebody in our audience to turn cyber insurance from this burden that they have to deal with into something that, cements strong relationships, say, with their customers?
I mean, I always support innovation. So I think at Cowbell, we're always excited to see what somebody else can bring to the table to make really an ease of business. We want it to be easy and somewhat attractive for our insureds to get better coverage or get coverage for the first time and understand and feel comfortable with the process. So that's always something, we're excited to see develop in the space. As more companies use scans, we certainly have proprietary scans that kind of show us what kind of controls are in place to make it less hefty for brokers to explain what they need in an application. And, maybe you're talking to the CFO, and so he's just not super IT literate. We're always looking to make our platform, as well as, anyone else's services out there, better for us and for our insureds.
CFOs are always IT literate. They know how to use that cup holder that's built into their desktop computer. You hit the button and it slides out, and that's where they stick their drink.
There you go.
I'm curious what when you talk about kind of in specific to Cowbell for the brokers, or you say, like, how do you land and expand your services, and who are your principal clients? Like who do you work with the most?
Like industry
industry verticals. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say there's a few that are kind of our key areas, and one is manufacturing, another is healthcare, and I would say a third big one for us. There's a couple that are just kind of like large catch-alls. So it's like so many in one, like professional services. There's so many aspects of that. But I would say another big one is public entities. We're always looking we have a pretty diversified book. So, we do a lot with financial services, life sciences. We do some with tech. We are a little limited there because we only provide cyber. We don't provide any tech E&O products. But we do certainly look to expand there in the future, and we do still provide cyber for those risks. So it's a pretty diversified spot. Yeah.
So if you go to like an IT services company, an MSP who needs tech, right? So you have, how do you tackle that? They're having to just partner with multiple providers, and maybe, like, I'm thinking about my clients who have these policies, the tech, policies, and just usually have a rider for their cybersecurity or what have you. How do you usually tackle that with them, and what's been your experience there?
Yeah, so I would say it was easier in the hard market because the tech market was incredibly difficult to navigate. So it made it much easier for us to say, hey, unfortunately, we can't provide you tech, but we can provide you cyber, which is still a significantly needed coverage for those risks. So we're able to help them some there, and then they just have to find the tech elsewhere. Ideally, those are on a blended form, so something that provides both tech and cyber coverage. But there are times where, the contract is really just for cyber. So maybe they go get 1 mil of solely tech E&O, and then we can provide them 5 mil of cyber. So, we're happy to help our brokers and prospective insureds as much as possible. But we are definitely, looking into entering that space in the near future.
Yeah, it's interesting because another thing I see pretty regularly across this world is, like, there's inherent risk in these IT service providers having ownership and responsibility and accountability across their clients' networks. And so it's a constant, everybody I talk to have different opinions around what their risk and liability looks like. How involved should they get in filling out those long forms? Because if they fill them out on behalf of the client entirely, are they saying that there's all these questions about it? And now there's that opportunity Rich was talking about, where I'm an IT service provider. I've got clients, I'm doing all their security for them. And now maybe there's an opportunity for me to actually take ownership as their virtual information security officer or whatever, to actually take ownership of, help them find cyber insurance, help them fill out those forms and pass that through to a partner. So I'm just kind of curious if what you see in that world.
Yeah, I think a big part for us too is, as much as we want to make those applications as easy as possible, so there's a lot of like check boxes of yes, no, you have it in place. If we can get a better story of what's happening, of like, hey, maybe I don't have MFA across the board right now, but we're actually looking to integrate X and Y in Q2 and then further on through the year. Anytime we can get a better idea and thought process of what they have, it really puts them in a better space. And so especially at Cowbell, we are kind of far more flexible and creative with how we underwrite versus some of our competitors. So it isn't oh, you don't have that, here's the door. It's a conversation to see where they are. Have they thought about it? What's kind of what's needed to make that happen. Sometimes, especially in our small market space, there is a challenge of, I only have so much for my IT budget. And, you're asking me to do 3 or 4 different things, and that doesn't fit within that. And that's something where underwriting partners with our risk engineers to kind of help them along to say, okay, you have, 40,000 for the year. Why don't we work on these 2 most critical things first? And, we can help you along there. And so that conversation is so important, that, it's easy to answer 4 questions, yes, no, and move on, but it's better if we get more detail. And if you don't know, good to know, and we can help you with that too. So, yeah.
And I'm also kind of curious, if I have, it's interesting to hear the verticals you principally serve. So if I have an IT company and I'm servicing principally healthcare providers and they're needing help in the cyber world, cyber insurance world, and I'm doing most of their security and IT management work, how would I work with you to bring policies to my clients? Is it just like a referral? Like how do you work? How would you work with an IT service provider to do that?
Yes, you would have to go through a broker. So what we would do is partner you with some of our top brokers in your area. We work with both retail and wholesale. So whatever really works for you best, but that's typically how we go about that. And then, we would note and understand that, it's also through that IT partnership as well. So I think all 3 of those stakeholders and more can really work together to make the whole position better. It can be a stressful, especially in the hard market. I think it was stressful for everybody to get coverage, obtain the appropriate information and make it happen. So, I think this year will be an interesting one, having the market soften and see kind of where that takes us.
So we spoke a little bit before about, your suggestions for folks in the audience about getting the best possible rates for their clients. The other end of the equation is claims. Any advice in terms of what the people listening or watching this podcast can do to get claims paid fully and promptly?
Yeah. So from my bank days, they always told us this with, the crime issues that can happen in banks, but don't be a hero. So don't try to handle it yourself, especially in terms of ransomware. Call your claims hotline as soon as possible. So a lot of times a threat actor could be scanning your system for months before they actually kind of take action. But once you notice something's off, you should get your insurer involved immediately. That just helps it go along smoother, that you can work with them on what that process looks like. You're not having to wait a longer period of time or pay things that may not be a part of the claim, or paying things unnecessarily. It just makes it a smoother process, and they can get you in all of the appropriate hands at all of the appropriate times. They're experts that have been doing it for decades, and it's just the best way to go about it.
Excellent. So I have one last person I want to ask, because I heard you talking about partnering, and Rich is asking about, how do your clients end up getting lower rates. And when I think about all the partnering that like an insurance company is doing with like companies like security companies, look down, 2 to 5 years down the road, is the insurance company going to be basically defining the security stack that their customers have to use? Like, so if you're partnering with Trend Micro and you're partnering with, Sophos and you're partnering with Microsoft, like, is the insurance company eventually going to be able to make those demands? Like, well, you have to use these partners, one, either to get insurance at all, or you'll get discounts if you use like our preferred security stack.
Yeah, we can offer discounts. We can't require them to use certain vendors. But I think it also poses an interesting piece that's been talked about in this space the last year of cyber insurance really driving the truck on, cybersecurity posture in US companies. I don't handle international, so I can't speak to it, but here with our first hard market in the cyber insurance space, I think people really were able to take their cybersecurity posture seriously and take the market seriously, that this isn't or shouldn't be seen as a cheap little ancillary coverage you can add on to your business policy, that this is really something significant that could affect your business far more than maybe originally anticipated way back when that's like 10 years ago when the product really started to take off. So I think there is a lot that we're trying to help, companies really get into a better space and kind of move the needle there.
Fascinating stuff. Unfortunately, we're just about out of time, but Jamison, I want to give you one last opportunity. If you have any other follow-up questions, fire away.
Yeah, I think that it's just interesting to hear. I'll mention this to my clients. To just mention, my clients talk about this all the time. It's interesting to hear about the struggle a lot of them have when they're consulting with their clients about like who's accountable, who's responsible, who's liable. People are getting more nervous about figuring this out. So I just thought it was really informative. Thank you for the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And there's a lot more to change. So I think what you just commented on is something we're all kind of looking in this space to see kind of how this develops and see then how the products develop.
Absolutely. Well, we could probably go all day on this topic, and I'm sure we'll definitely have you back on again down the road as the cyber insurance market changes and as the security, threats out there change. Everything is always in flux. Emma Werth, Regional Vice President of Underwriting at Cowbell Cyber. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope you had a good time.
I did. Thank you so much for having me.
Excellent. Well, and with that, we are going to take a short break. When we come back, Jamison will be with us on the other side. We're going to break down the show. We're going to talk about this interview. We're going to have a little bit of fun. You never know what's going to happen. That's why you have to stay tuned. So stick around. We will be right back. And we are back now with part 3 of this episode of ChannelPro Weekly. A great interview with Emma Werth, the Regional VP of Underwriting at Cowbell Cyber. Very well spoken, very insightful, very interesting. It's you don't normally get that perspective when you're talking about cyber insurance. You're getting MSPs, your peers' perspective, but not necessarily that direct. I learned a lot. But let me turn it over to you first, Jamison. Any highlights or anything you took away from that interview that you found insightful?
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting as I think about tech, versus cyber. I think a lot of people don't really understand the nuance or the difference. I think what was most insightful for me is that she wasn't like, yeah, it's going up 500% again this year. Like this is going to soften. We're figuring this out. That was good to hear. And I think I have clients who are going to like hearing that. So I like that different perspective.
Yeah, for sure. Rich, any takeaways you want to highlight?
I'm intrigued by this idea that came up during the conversation because I asked the question, well, is there a way for a ChannelPro to turn this into a competitive advantage or something that makes them stronger in the market versus just this burden that they're forced to deal with? And there's something interesting in this idea that if you partner with the right people, whether that's the cyber insurer or the broker or whatever, that you can sort of hide the complexity of that whole process from the customer, streamline the application process and the acquisition, help them get better rates. This idea that there are people out there in the audience who can kind of present themselves to the end user, not as insurance experts, which is always risky for an MSP. The broker is the expert, but as someone who is especially good at facilitating that very necessary process and can help you save money and save time. That might give you a little bit of an edge over another, MSP that you're competing with, and might kind of lend some further credence to your claim that we're big on cybersecurity. It's like that includes cyber insurance.
Yeah, very, very interesting thing to highlight. I also found it really interesting how much more visibility cyber insurance companies are getting into the end users' setups and networking and like in almost real-time monitoring, which I think is kind of interesting as well. And I have a feeling that's just going to get more and more pervasive and prevalent in that market. If you want to, if you want to get insurance, or if you want to get any kind of decent rate, you're probably going to have to give that level of visibility to the insurance company, which is also interesting. So fascinating stuff. I'm sure we're going to be watching the cyber insurance market closely as we go forward and commenting on changes there. But a big thanks to Emma for joining us. That was really, really great. I hope everyone got a lot out of it. And if you did, email us. Let us know your feedback. Podcast@channelpronetwork.com. Of course, you can also hit us up on the socials that we're on all of those. I still can't talk today. Still working through that. Go and send us your feedback. So let us tell us what you thought, and maybe what else you'd want to know about cyber insurance that we could pass on and ask. Jamison, that leads us to the fun part of our show where we always like to play games. Now, you've been with us before. We played 5 questions with you in the past, which is what kind of our staple game. Everybody loves it. But, once you've had a guest on a couple times and you played that a couple times, you want to do something different. So Rich and I have kind of developed another game that we've been playing recently that we call Versus. It's basically like a this or that kind of thing. We're going to give you 2 choices on a particular topic, and you can only choose one. And we're going to see if we can kind of land on your preferred thing of whatever we're going to talk about. And what are we going to talk about? Well, Super Bowl Sunday is this weekend. Big game coming up between I think it's the Eagles and the Chiefs, if I remember correctly, right?
That is correct.
Okay, yeah, you're a football fan, Rich, so you would know. So that's coming up this weekend. And of course, we might have talked about this in the past, but that's okay because there's no wrong time to talk about not necessarily football, but the wonderful junk food that surrounds watching the Super Bowl. And I do love a good smorgasbord of Super Bowl snacks. And I know, Jamison, you're going to probably be watching the game and also have a variety of things. But what is if you could only have one Super Bowl snack, what is that preferred one? So we're going to give you 2 choices, and then you're going to pick one of those, and Rich and I'll go back and forth a few times, maybe 5 or 6 guesses, and see if we can land on what your ultimate Super Bowl snack is. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
He's ready. He's like,
yeah, I'm like thinking about like what my favorites are, but I think I'm ready. Hit me.
All right. So Rich, give him 2 snacks to kick us off.
Okay, let's go big. Pizza versus buffalo wings.
Oh, buffalo wings. I'd go pizza over buffalo wings. Yeah.
Pizza over wing. Ooh, and wings is a Super Bowl staple. All right. Another staple. Wings. So you said pizza. Pizza's still in the running. Wings are out. Pizza versus nachos.
Nachos.
He's going nachos. Tortilla and cheese over bread and cheese. We're seeing a common theme though. Cheese covered thing. So Rich, nachos is now in the lead. Where are you going to go from there?
This will be interesting because it's almost like a subset of nachos, but nachos versus chips and guac.
Oh, chips and guac.
Guac over cheese. Guac over cheese. All right, but we're still on the take a chip and dip category. I'm gonna throw it for a loop because depending on, not everybody likes junk food. They might be tempted by something else. So we'll say chips and guac versus the classic veggie platter. It has like the carrots and the broccoli and the ranch and stuff.
Too healthy. Chips and guac.
Too healthy. So Jameson is not going down the health route. All right, Rich, back over to you.
So, and now we're getting into nuances here. Chips and guac versus chips and salsa.
Right, Rich, we know what Rich's choice is. He's all about the chips and something.
I actually am. But
sticking with guacamole.
Stan guac. All right, I'm going to throw us to something different. So chips and guac versus popcorn.
Oh, chips and guac.
Okay, we're still there. Rich, we got to see if we can beat chips and guac, which is a great combination. I just feel like there's
You kept
probably
going, and all of a sudden I'm just stuck on this one. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's got to be better alternatives. Rich, where are you going? Oh, I know what I'm going to ask next.
Oh gosh. So chips and guac versus I'm trying to kind of veer in the direction of something a little bit more entree-like, because I always look forward to there being a nice sandwich spread at any Super Bowl party that I go to. But I won't just say sandwich. I'll do something related. So chips and guac versus hot dogs, or bratwurst. Let's say bratwurst specifically.
It's pretty good. I'm sticking with chips and guacamole. I'm having a hard time getting off this one.
I think I got a couple of them. I'm gonna throw them at you, but I'm gonna start with this one. Chips and guac versus something that we had at our last Super Bowl party. Sliders.
Chips and guac.
Picking a chip and guac over sliders, man. Rich, this is tough. Let's get one more guess each.
That was a tough one.
We might have to.
I do like sliders.
Just might be reign supreme in Jamison's world. We'll have to see. Rich, one more guess.
It might be difficult to unseat chips and guac, but how about chips and guac versus quesadillas?
Ooh, can they have guac on them?
We need a ruling from the judges on this one. What do you say, Matt?
I think you can have guac on them. We can dip your quesadilla in whatever you want.
Go with quesadillas.
Quesadilla but with the caveat of guac.
With guac.
With guac. All right. So maybe is there any one non-guac related thing? Quesadillas with guac versus bacon wrapped chicken bites, or bacon wrapped something. Like maybe little hot dogs.
You almost had me. Like jalapenos or something, or shrimp or something. I don't know.
Bacon wrapped. I meant to say bacon wrapped protein.
Bacon wrapped guacamole. No, I'm just bacon wrapped protein. Yeah, no, I'll go with that one. I like that one. I'm going to switch. You're finding out about my guacamole. I think bacon and anything pretty much would win.
And as we've discovered many times on ChannelPro Weekly, when it comes to food, bacon always wins.
That's right.
Like 99% of the time. So bacon wrapped, whatever the heck it is, if it's wrapped in bacon, that's for me. That's for Jamison as well. Lots of fun playing. Are you having a Super Bowl party?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And what things do you plan on serving at your Super Bowl spread?
My fiance makes the best buffalo chicken dip, which you guys didn't do. So that might have won too, but I make spicy guacamole. She makes buffalo chicken dip. So we're lots of that. And then I don't know, we're going to have platters of stuff all over the place. I think it's going to be mostly a Mexican spread. So we'll see.
Buffalo chicken dip sounds good. Yeah, we're going to a Super Bowl party this year too. It's going to have a taco spread, so Mexican theme, and we're bringing homemade. My wife makes homemade refried beans, and I know that sounds kind of weird, but she makes them from scratch, and they are fantastic. So we're doing that. I don't know if that would win over bacon wrapped anything, but it is very good. So Rich, what are you doing for Super Bowl?
You know what? I'm the only guy on this podcast who's not going to or hosting I'm just going to watch the game.
Nothing wrong with that. And I assume you're going to make yourself some vittles. What are you going to be consuming?
And you are correct that there will be Super Bowl snacks at hand. I have not actually decided. I'll probably figure that out on Saturday. I usually do my grocery shopping on Saturdays anyway. I'll whatever is looking really good to me on Saturday is probably what I'll wind up eating. But chips and guac is actually a strong candidate. Yeah,
I like a good guac. Hopefully there's some at the party I'm going to as well. So awesome stuff. Jamison, thanks for playing along. I hope you had fun. We get to learn a little bit about the mind of Jamison, which is very guacamole heavy. So that's pretty good as well. Well, before we say goodbye, Rich, we're gonna kind of wrap up the show here. And I think we've got it in case you missed it this week. So why don't you tell us what we might have missed and what might be coming up next week?
Yeah, we do indeed have it in case you missed it this week. Those appear every other week now on Fridays on ChannelProNetwork.com, written by our own James Gaskin. This week, he's got his take on the AI news from Microsoft that we all heard about earlier this week. There's some partner program news from Lenovo and Acronis, some cloud and security news from Cisco this week. They had a conference overseas, and you will never guess how much the prop, the blaster that Han Solo carried in the first Star Wars movie sold for recently. But James knows it's a world record. He will tell you all about that tomorrow. And in case you missed it, Coming up next week, the MSP Expo conference in Fort Lauderdale. It's actually co-located with the IoT Evolution Expo conference in Fort Lauderdale as well. I have a hunch that our own Joel Zadespinner is going to be there, though I don't know that for certain. IOTSA, the IoT security folks, are going to be doing a show, a multi-day show, actually, in Phoenix next week. And then there will be a pretty big launch from a pretty big name in VDR, and that's all I can say. Just kind of keep an eye out on the headlines next week.
Ooh, embargoes. Those Rich knows something and he just can't tell us yet. So keep your eyes on the headlines. We'll get into that in a second. But I want to say big thanks to Jamison West for coming on and joining us. Always a pleasure. Always great to hear from you. Great insights on all these topics. I hope you had a good time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
And for those who might want to connect with you, get to know you, take up your services as a business coach, or check out TimeZest, where can they go? How can they find you?
Yeah, ConnectStrat.com or TimeZest.com. But you just want to direct traffic anywhere, just come to JamisonWest.com. Man, make it easy.
Make it easy. That's what we always try to do. And here on the show. And again, big thanks for coming on. And a big thanks to Emma Werth for coming on as well. That was a really great interview with her as well. But you know what? If you wanted to check out those headlines that Rich is kind of teasing, where would you go? And that's channelpronetwork.com. Set it as your homepage, bookmark it, go there each and every day. Check out all the stories that we got. We got stories coming up on there all the time. And of course, you follow the Channel Pro Network on all the different socials. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we're on all those things. And of course, subscribe to the Channel Pro Weekly podcast everywhere podcasts are found. So if you have a favorite podcast place, we will most likely be there. We are in 99% of them, if not all of them. And if you happen to use one that we're not in, let us know, and we'll make sure that we get in there as well. We're also on YouTube. If you like to watch on YouTube, you can hit the subscribe button, hit the like, hit the thing, leave a comment, leave a rating on all those places too. It's always very helpful as well. And that way you'll never miss an episode with our great guests like Jamison West, who join us each and every week. Speaking of guests joining us each and every week, Rich, any preview on who we might have on the show next week?
So next week, our guest host is going to be an MSP named Erica Martinez Rose, who has been on the cover of our magazine and not all that long ago. And our guest, we're sort of rectifying a lapse on our part this week, Matt, by getting Jamison back on the show. We're going to have Jay McBain back on the podcast for the first time in a little bit too long next week. So that's something to look forward to as well.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, we haven't had Jay on in a while. And boy, talk about a guy who's just got so much insight and it has his finger on like the pulse and the future of everything. Really great. Oh, I'm so excited. And that's a new guest host. I don't believe we've ever had her on before, correct?
Nope.
Ooh,
yeah.
So something new next week, folks. You're not going to want to miss it. Subscribe everywhere. Check out the site. Do all this stuff. If you have any feedback, comments, questions, anything you want us to ask Jay, podcast@channelpronetwork.com. Send us your questions. We will ask Jay those questions. And there is almost no better person in the channel to ask lots of these types of questions. So you're not going to miss it, folks. We'll see everybody in episode 256 next week. See you then. Take care.